Hi all and welcome to From Russia with Love 8, Part A. Now the implications of this piece and the second and third parts of this show are wide-ranging and will involve several pieces of my work I've put together, plus supporting information from others, and more of the dots will be connected. If you have absorbed the previous episodes of this series, plus some of the op-ed pieces I've done in the shows, a clearer picture begins to emerge. This will be dot connecting on a massive scale, and the term of upsetting the apple cart will apply here. To encompass much of From Russia with Love 1 through 7, and it also adds much deeper layers to it as the never-ending rabbit hole goes deeper, wider and higher than you all imagined. Upsetting the apple cart means to ruin a plan or an event, and this series does that when you connect it all together. If you leave the apple cart untouched, it begins to rot the fruit. The fruit was us. They are the cart. That cart is losing its wheels and is a bit rackety today. These three parts, plus From Russia with Love 9, will disassemble the cart, which is the framework of the dark forces. This one involves astroastrology, moon worship, occultism, demonism, all under the auspices of Hebrew or the Jewish religion, Hinduism and several other organisations. Part 2 will reveal the umbrella they are all under. Part 3 will add more and connect more of the dots and is a summary of it all, setting the stage for From Russia with Love 9. It also brings in the Saturn Moon matrix, what is the eclipse, the vril role in it, yin and yang explanations, Solomon, temples, sacrifices, dark magic, India and its deities. But first, before we get into the main, I will go into a summary of From Russia with Love 1 through 7 as a recap, as parts of A tonight, B and C to follow will connect dots back to the previous episodes on a massive scale. We started off with From Russia with Love 1, which brought in the Urs, the Aryans, the Kalimar, the sub-grey race, the Knight of the Svarog, the Vedic texts which are nothing to do with India, the Koshis, who are the dark forces, and the three moons in our skies back then. The fake Bolshevik takeover of Russia done by the priest class known as Cohen or Khan, the lost continent of the Arya, later known as Hyperborea, spacecraft travel on this world and how they operated, the stargates and the celestial needles, the four palaces, now known as the constellations, the four gardens of Eden, who are and were the Israelites, who was the Lord. In part 2, we heard about the real genocide that took place against the Russian people, not the Zionist-based only narrative, how the Urs tried to use genetics to cure the Kalimar peoples, how the Urs taught the Rus and the Aryan populations how to be a higher form of human, the fast destroyer weapon used on this planet, the war of Atlantis, not Atlantis. We heard of the original Jerusalem not being in Israel but Russia, called Jerusalem. We heard about Radomir and Mary Magdalene. Both had blue eyes, and Mary had the blonde hair as well, meaning they were Rus, Aryan, not Middle Eastern. Part 3 brought us how all of society's main functions to protect or serve the people are corrupted. The exodus to Egypt, the cult of Ra in Egypt, and the exodus out of there into Europe, where they quickly went through the houses and the churches, and we had the rise of the cat cult, Cleopatra, Mark Antony and Julius Caesar. We learned of the genealogy of the Jews out of India and the Eastern countries, lots of word magic and mistranslations, how the Exodus not only went east out of India but north as well, and created the Ashkenazi line from Noah, who was not one of us, but one of the Anunnaki line. We learned of Solomon, Hebrew, temples and ritual sacrifice, what the six-pointed star really means. There was no letter J 2,000 years ago. We learned about Baal and proved that the modern day Israelite country, tradition, narrative and characters all came out of Egypt. Marduk, who played Ra, which is a title. Moloch, the child sacrificer, represented by an owl, as the Egyptian word for owl is Moloch or Molech. The Sanhedrin, the Talmud, why all roads lead to Rome, and their role in the subversion of humanity. Part 4 showed how the Israelite cult of Ra, formerly the Kali Ma peoples out of India, took over the houses of Europe and the names involved in it, particularly the Rothschilds family. How they took over the courts, banking, finance and governments, who rarely owned the slave ships ran under the banner of Dutch and British East India Tea Corporation. We learned of eugenics, the reverse psychology program of white supremacy, New Age fakery, Planned Parenthood, how the white race in the 1920s represented 30+% of the world demographics and is now down to 12% and fallen. The setting of the stage of the takeover of America, the massacre of the indigenous people in America in 1920 in Tulsa, 1921, sorry. How the term Indian came not from America, but from India itself. Who are the KKK and their connection to the Democrats of not only America, but the Nazis in Germany. And no, Nazi does not mean German. It is National Zionism. Zionism is part of a cult and has no real country. How the African slave traded their own people long before Europeans arrived. How 98% of people who call themselves African American are actually indigenous Americans, not Africans. The takeover of Germany, done by the same Zionists that ransacked, destroyed and murdered nearly 90 million Russians, fake Templars, fake Founding Fathers, and we asked the question, were the Germans duped? If Germany was all about the white race, why did they attack Poland, the Slavic people, or the Russian people? We also heard in part 4 how there was 2 attempts by Hitler to get all the Jews out of the camps, and the Rothschilds and Begin refused. We heard how the Rothschilds, along with Lord Balfour, went about creating a future Jewish state. We heard of where the 2 worst plagues on this planet originated in India and Egypt. Coincidence? Part 5 brought us the fake Melchizedek line. Who were the Cathars? The Lord being Anu, the reptile Draco king. The mark of the Nephilim, which is scaly skin, ascended masters are not from the sky, but us after developing on a soul level. What is a god? Not some fake entity coming down from the sky in a fiery chariot. None of them developed themselves and so tried to piggyback on humanity. We learned of the Kalergi plan of the Zionists. We learned of the protocols of the elders of Zion, which paid stooges and scholars have gone to great lengths to deny it was real. Methinks they doth protest too much for it not to be real. Plus the fact that so much of that narrative from those protocols has played out. We went through Hebrew terms and traditions, fake calendars, fake holy days, all based on paganism, how the Hebrews accepted the bribes and the seducements of the Lord, Anu, just as the Australian and New Zealand tribes did 16,500 years ago and sold humanity out. We learned then of a fake religion based on some non-existent Egyptian plates given to him by an angel that mysteriously disappeared, including some of the incriminating text, and morphed into a child-abusing and sacrificial cult known as Mormonism, replete with the old Egyptian symbolism, the temple, the altar, the sacrifice, and the cult of Ra. We went into word magic Hebrew style, the role of the crown in their temple gates, church, knights and bar, and how they forced the Magna Carta on King John and sold out all British subjects, not freed them as some alt-media people believe. How Adam and Lilith, not Eve, were not human, but their creation via genetics. How the popular Vulcan sign in Star Trek is a Hebrew Kabbalah secret sign. The life longevity of the biblical characters Noah, Abraham, Adam and Enoch. Why? Because they were one of them, not one of us. We learned of the moon cult, paganism, all wrapped into it, the rise of Zionism from the 1600s onwards, the role of New York and this cult, Cleopatra's Needle, all about the cult of Ra, sacrificial and sexual deviancy practices, all originating out of New York, financial and global skullduggery via the Federal Reserve, Wall Street and the UN, all out of New York, and the rise of the now common term in THI shows, born in, born to, New York and Jewish parents. How Joachim and Boaz turned into Osiris with the Twin Towers tragedy on 9/11, and how and why New York is dubbed Gotham and the rise of the Dark Elves, portrayed as a superhero in Batman, but it and they are not our friends, far from it. We learned that the Hitler Youth song, Tomorrow Belongs to Me, was written by two Jewish people, which sounds crazy to many people. Not when you connect the dots, it's not. Same program, same cult. We ended part 5 with the role of AIPAC in and on proceedings in this country, a political driver of politics and policies in favour of the Zionist state known as Israel, Isis, Ra and El, which means God. Secret cells dotted all over America pretending to be a charity of some sorts, but essentially have bought and paid for virtually every politician in this country, and they, along with a lesser known group known as J Street, have done far more damage in this coup of America than most people realise, all done by this cult. Part 6, we went back to Russia, of how the Rothschilds clan, and Zydo Masons stole everything from Russia, and it was the stolen funds from Russia that Americans largely enjoyed their prosperity since World War I. The role of the Swiss, the fake Russian names that were all actually Jewish. How Leo Wanta and his Langley II counterparts with Reagan looted everything out of Russia again following the end of the fake Cold War and the alleged fall of communism. Communism was created by the Zionists, not Russians, Chinese or any other country. How successive so-called Russian leaders from World War I were all Zionists looting the country and murdering the people. How Ray C. Dam, another of the Rothschilds appointed Langley operators, tried to steal the global accounts via the OITC, with other Langley-based clowns like Keenan, Keith Scott, Winston Shrout also playing roles in global theft and control attempts, along with the World Bank fraudster Karen Hudis. Part 7 brought in the OSS, which is SS, which became the CIA and the NSA, all under the banner of Five Eyes, which went to Nine Eyes, which went to No Eyes, courtesy of the work of the Trust. From the role of the SS to cryptography, which led to the creation of the NSA, Enigma machines, the whole structure, their roles and purpose of each division of the OSS, how they went about subverting peoples, governments, created wars, assassination programs, their role in communications of how they control every form of communication on the planet, and how the CIA and National Security Act, which was created not to protect Americans or the country, but to cover up agency-led crimes and operations, including clandestine money-making programs, black budgets and operations, plus loot countries and their people. We learned how all the early CIA leaders were all linked with the OSS. Then came the Bushes, Cheneys and the Black Dragon groups. All were traitors to the country and the people. We learned of the P2 Lodge, known as Propaganda Jew, as in pro-pagan Dar. We learned of several CIA offshoot splinter groups, like Robert David Steele and his aptly named company called OSS. How they used all the so-called stars for their operations. How they controlled the media. How their scripts is the news. And we found out how Lennon, Elvis, Metallica, Carl Jung were all used by the CIA as spies or operatives. How they deal with people who were their assets and suddenly become disposable, either by throwing them in jail under false charges, or just taking them out, or using their MKUltra tactics to get their former assets to commit suicide by triggering mechanisms attached to the mind control program. We learned who was involved in the JFK assassination, the Cypher program, the Black Chamber, using the New York Commercial Code Company to spy on all communications, and how the British used the post office for data mining as far back as the 1920s. How the CIA in the 1970s was spending $1 billion a year on propaganda alone. And also since the 1940s they have been in every college or university profiling everyone and recruiting students for their various programs. The Foreign National Students Exchange Program is also run by the CIA and the Vatican. We ended part 7 with the exposure of the Tavistock Institute, also connected to the CIA and OSS. Their mind control programs that roped in MK Ultra tactics on the people of interest. They also used and created, in some cases, the stars of the time. The Beatles and the Rolling Stones were a product of Tavistock, also hip-hop and rap. We ended that show with a question. The question remains, if all this fighting for freedom and getting rid of dictators, despots, communists and tyrants that has gone on for the last 100 years, with them all now out of the way, why hasn't our lives improved one iota? It hasn't, because the real tyrants are still in our midst is why. And perhaps the leading figures killed were not the problem after all, just the ones that killed them. This show and the next 2 shows lined up will bring it home. This is 8 and the loop. This will create the umbrella with which all the names we have referenced in the previous shows, from Kalimar to the Cult of Ra, Jewish, Hebrew and various agencies, operate under. From Russia with Love 9, soon to follow, will make you understand more of how it all worked and who were the players, or in real terms, the pawns in the game. Hi all and welcome back. Quite a recap that, wasn't it? We've covered quite a lot. These next portions are going to expand the neural pathways in a new way. And this is called The Sun, the Moon and Astronomy. Now, modern day science still struggles to make sense of the world around us. Information is often denied if it sways off the official path, as it were. None more so than when astronomy comes into the picture. A plethora of misinformation, from flat Earth to distances to how everything is so far away when actually it's not. Science can't or won't explain of why, when you go into the sky and into space, which is closer to the sun, it gets colder, not warmer. There is a reason the Catholic Church closed down the school teaching program in the 14th century when astronomy was the lead subject taught, and ultimately dismissed it as a fake science. And yet, curiously today, that same church control most of the world's telescopes, including one by the aptly named title, for them anyway, called Lucifer. The so-called Holy Church, based on morals, principles and the worship of God, calling their telescope by the devilish name Lucifer. Does that make any sense to anyone? It will if you followed this series. Solar eclipses. Eclipses make no sense. The moon makes no sense. All the elites and witchcraft people all do occult rituals on the cycles of the moon. The Hebrew Jewish peoples, India and other corrupted tribal groups all following the moon cult. In mythologies and even the more modern day calculations and observances, the frequency spike during the full moon. That sends many people around the world into various bizarre and extreme behaviour patterns. There is a reason for the term lunatic for unbalanced people. Perhaps the breakdown of that word makes things more clear. Lunar meaning moon, tick means parasite. The moon cycle created what are deemed the myths of werewolves. those entities are not myths, but reality-based. There are still whole family lines around the world which contain that genetic default. The wolf realm is the first realm some people encounter with travel abilities, and no, it's not good. Despite several Native American cultures adopting it as their animal totem, like the astral realm, it has become corrupted and a trap. The next realm along is the circus realm, and why people fear clowns and mirrors. The Hall of Mirrors, anyone? All of Marduk's meetings, the Bilderbergers, the Club of Rome, the UN, and other secret society meetings, financial meetings, the delivery of the fabled, non-existent, non-deliverable RV, was all done or happening on the lunar cycle. The Circle of Nine cult, the people inside the Vatican, and I'm not talking about the Pope, Bohemian Grove, the Denver cult, the Hellfire Caves, and various others around the world all do their rituals, sexual deviancy, often with children, sacrificed and tortured children again on the moon cycle. Modern witches all do their spells and rituals, all pulled along with the New Age program, which was all set up in the 1880s by the likes of Blavatsky and others. And some think Blavatsky, Steiner and the Lord of One talks about good things. Yes, it does, like the Catholic Church, but there's a hidden hook to it. That far too many go so far down the fishing line before being able to see it. People get trapped by the words, spells of love and light, unity consciousness, Mother Nature, all of which is nice to hear and make it actionable, but there's a hidden element to it, oblivious to the naive amongst us. The Law of One, peddled by David Wilcock, all about Ra, the harvesting and murdering humanity entity, which is all told in one story that is written on Cleopatra's Needle in New York. Throw in the fact that channeling is all done by technology trickery, largely to people who have been in the MK Ultra programs, and you are left listening to what you want to hear, not what you need to hear. In the world of witchcraft, it's all about the moon goddess, names and titles with them people, as any quick internet search of their groups will show you. Modern witchcraft is the practice of paganism and Wicca, again a group who took part in the moon worship and sacrifice rituals, including at Stonehenge. Oops. Islam is another of the moon cults, hence the crescent moon as their symbol. Moon worship has been practiced in Arabia since 2000 BC. The crescent moon is the most common symbol of this pagan moon worship as far back as 2000 BC, long before Muhammad. There was a god named Hubal, who was lord of the Kaaba. This Hubal was a moon god. Each local pagan Arab tribe would refer to their own local tribal pagan god as Al-Ilah. Al-Ilah was later shortened to Allah when Muhammad began promoting his new religion in 610 AD. So what this tells us is the root of Islam is paganism, moon rituals, mired in with witchcraft and the dance with the demons and jinns via their dark magic. That's where the Ali Baba and the magic carpet came from. And they can protest, but we are light witches all they like. But both light and dark use the jinns, which is known as demons, to perform their spells and magic. These people that practice the Ouija board, again dancing with the dark, again bringing in the corrupted spirit world. And the same applies with ayahuasca or peyote ceremonies. Most of the shaman or shaman have no idea that what they're getting their participants into. All in the name of spirituality, they say. All in the name of making money, is my reply, with dire consequences for the participants in some cases. So why all the moon worship? Well, this goes back to From Russia with Love Part 1 and the worship of the Kali Ma, known as the Dark Mother, which is the moon, and the female representation of the moon is Lilith, who is the real partner of Adam, not Eve. All depictions of Lilith are half human and half serpent. Perhaps it confirms it was she, Lilith, the talking snake, that was in the Garden of Eden, not Eve as described. Of course, this week we have the ultimate in dark entertainment that rolls the children around the world into dancing with the dark, and Halloween takes place at night as it's moon related. It is the night the dark elements in our society call in the dead spirits and jinns for a so-called night of celebration, using spells and incantations, and even uses the children to act out on it. Nowadays it's turned into another money marketing scheme, but the hidden dark intentions behind it should not be lost in the plethora of pumpkins, masks, costumes and candy. It was originally called All Hallows Eve and was pagan in origin until the Catholic Church Christianized it into Halloween. They did the same with the Easter festival, again pagan in origin, as worship of the goddess Ostara. The Catholic Church changed it in the 8th century and morphed it into the Jesus story. All Hallows Eve, all hail Eve, except Eve was Lilith, half woman, half serpent. Lilith is often envisioned as the dangerous demon of the night, who is sexually wanton and also steals babies in the darkness, worshipped by the Hebrews via the Talmud. And is it possible there's even a reference to her in the Lord's Prayer? Hallowed be thy name. Our current moon is not even a natural object. Like Phobos, the Death Star, its orbital spin is unnatural in comparison to every other moon in the solar system. The same side always faces the Earth. That is not a natural orbit. That is something that was placed and positioned there. And some Native American folklore say the moon arrived here sometime around 11 to 12,000 years ago. What it is a hollow satellite station. as NASA proved themselves when they fired a missile at it and it rang like a bell for quite a while. Populated by various off-world entities over time, and still to this day, although unlike in the past, it is not interfering with here and us anymore. And it's also why NASA never returned to the moon since the 1970s. It was linked in a frequency-based relay of mind control system with Saturn, known as the Saturn-Moon Matrix, until events in the past 5 years ended that technology and program of interference. The solar eclipse creates awe and fear around the world depending on your culture. Having witnessed the last one in America and the one in the UK in 1999, although typically the UK was heavily masked with clouds, and some of the American one was also courtesy of the US military and chemtrailing. Now, the biggest issue I and others have is nobody sees the moon before or after the eclipse. Science and media dismiss it all so frivolously, and the topic is largely left alone. But the great question remains is, why don't we see the moon? Well, we see it going across the sun, Thomas. No, you see an object going across the sun. And because you are told it is the moon, doesn't mean it is correct. Why can't you even see the features on the moon as it's eclipsing? The light is focused on the far side, not the Earth-facing side. Here is maybe why. Well, actually it is. It's not maybe. According to Vedic astronomy, which is the most ancient and said to be the most accurate system of astronomy on the planet, solar eclipses are not caused by the moon coming in front of the sun, as astronomers believe. Rather, the moon is described as being further away than the sun, and what happens at the time of the solar eclipse is our moon goes behind the sun, and a dark planet called Rahu comes between the sun and the earth. Rahu. R-A-H-U. Ra, of course, is the title of the fake solar god that comes under the banner of the Son of God, Son spelt S-O-N instead of S-U-N, played by Marduk and Anu in the past, plus some of the Egyptian pharaohs. Pharaoh means great house. So now you know where the terms of the House of Bavaria or Saxe or Angin comes from, all out of Egypt. Hu in Sumerian means serpent. In Sanskrit it means dragon. So Rahu is Ra is the head serpent or dragon. Remember, in certain things, this is not in the script, but I've just remembered, they talk about the snake going across the sky, and modern scientists and astronomers will tell you it's the Milky Way. Perhaps it's not. Of course, we have been conditioned to believe as fact the structure of the universe as it's been taught to us since childhood, and we find it very difficult to accept such a thing. But how can the teachers of the book be wrong, people would argue, because they were taught wrong also. It only takes 2 generations to do a 180 on any narrative. All Aryans are white supremacists. Narrative is a prime example. But it only requires a little thought and observation to see that actually the so-called modern scientific idea is incompatible with their observations, and the timeless Vedic knowledge is compatible with clear observations. Look at the moon on a full moon night. It's shining so brightly that it lights up the whole surface of the earth. On a full moon night you can see very clearly everything. Of course, it's not as bright as the sunshine, but essentially everything is clearly visible. If you were to view the earth from space on a full moon night, it would not be dark. It would be illuminated by the moonshine, and all the features of the earth would be clearly visible. But as there is moonshine, there also is earth shine. Much of the earth is covered by water, which is a good reflector of sunlight. In fact, most of the scientists say that earth shine is much brighter than moonshine. And we know the earth is enormous in comparison to the size of the moon. The moon is around 27% of the size of earth by comparison. So if the moonshine can completely illuminate this earth on a full night, then it would make sense the earth shine can completely illuminate the moon. The earth shine bombarding the moon at the time of a total solar eclipse would be at almost 50 times brighter than the moonshine on the earth on a full moon night. Now, if Western astronomers are correct, the solar eclipse would be the perfect time to see the moon illuminated by the earth shine. Now, the shadow created which causes the solar eclipse on Earth is, according to NASA anyway, almost 167 miles wide. The path of totality. So if you were sitting on the moon during a solar eclipse, you would see an extremely bright Earth planet with a dark circle of only 167 miles wide. But this is not enough to diminish the earth shine in any significant way. Why is it not reflecting back? Why is the circle only 167 miles wide when the moon is covering the whole of the sun as observed? Does that make sense? When the sun tracks across our planet, it's in a giant wave motion. You can see it on Google Earth. It's like an upside down U that covers an area of sunlight from California or the west coast to the extreme west of India. A total of 8,490 miles. So surely a total eclipse would plunge that same area into darkness, not a 167-mile region of totality. getting the drift now? So even though the sun is behind the moon, the full force of the sunshine is hitting the earth and reflecting off the blue oceans and reflecting off the land also. So the moon is completely illuminated by earth shine, even though the sun is directly behind it. But the problem is you can't see the moon, both approaching the sun or leaving it after the eclipse. Now, if Western astronomers were correct, if you were in that 167-mile wide path of the total eclipse of the sun, when the sun was completely covered, you would of course see the sky become black, and then you could see the stars. But if the sun was covered by the moon, you would be able to see the moon quite clearly in front of the sun, illuminated by the earth shine. Not as bright as the full moon, but the earth shine would certainly illuminate the surface of the moon, so we could clearly see it and clearly make out the features on the moon's surface. But this doesn't happen. During the solar eclipse, the sun goes completely black. And even though the sunlight is blocked out and the sky goes black, one cannot detect the moon at all. It's just black. No moon. Like I said, we should be able to see the features on the moon as it's being reflected off the earth with the sunshine or the earth shine. Remember, the path of totality is only 167 miles. The rest of the earth is all bathed in earth shine, which should reflect off the moon. The sun should disappear and we should see the stars, and in place of the sun we should see the moon illuminated by the earth shine. But this is not what we see. So what does it mean? What it means is it's not the moon causing the solar eclipses, as stated from the Vedas. That what causes the solar eclipse is a dark planet currently unknown in the Western world except in occultic circles, which hides in the shadow of the moon. Oops. And people will say, but scientists would have discovered it by now. It was only 80 years ago they discovered Pluto as the 9th planet, not the 8th as they put out in the mainstream. Because before that was Ceres, which is rarely mentioned, like the dwarf planet Eris, said to have been discovered in 2005. And yet the natives, tribal people, knew about it thousands of years ago. Rahu is relatively close to us, around about the same distance as we think the moon is, but it is completely black. It does not reflect light at all. So even though there is plenty of earth shine fallen on Rahu, because it's a black planet, none of that light will be reflected back. It is the void. So we would see the sun simply blacked out in the sky on a full eclipse, which is exactly what we see. Now science tells you the moon is roughly 250,000 miles away. Some calculations suggest it's around 3,000 miles away. All I know is on some days it looks a lot closer than is being made out. I suspect this dark planet, Rahu, also has elements of cloaking attached to it. People have seen the evidence on YouTube videos whereby the moon is rippling. It makes no sense that people can see the moon on opposite sides of the world at the same time. So is Rahu, if visible at certain times, is it Rahu? It is likely a projection image, and so possibly a copy of our moon. That explains the rippling. So this is absolute proof that the assumption of Western astronomers that solar eclipses are caused by the moon coming between the Earth and the Sun is wrong. Because if that was the case, we would be able to see the moon during the full eclipse of the Sun as it would be bathed in earthshine. Hi all and welcome back. Quite a bit to get your head round that last piece. It always is when it's new, when we've had so-called official stories rammed down our ears all our lives. And we're going to go deeper into what is behind Rahu and also Ketu. Now Rahu is one of the 9 major astronomical bodies in the Navagraha, which is said to be Indian texts. They are not Indian at all, but they are the Vedic and the Rus texts. So what are the Navagraha? They are Surya, Ravi, the sun, Chandra, Soma, the moon, Mangala, Mangal, Mars, Buddha, Bud, Mercury, Devguru, Brihaspati, Jupiter, Shukra, Venus, Shani, Saturn, Rahu, solar eclipse, and Ketu, lunar eclipse. Now curiously in those texts there's no reference to the 3 outer planets, including the other 2 bodies, Ceres and Eris, of Uranus, Neptune or Pluto. Now unlike the other 8, Rahu is a shadow entity. Nice terminology there. The one that causes the eclipse, and is also known as the King of Meteors. The rock throwers. You've heard me mention that term about throwing rocks at our planet. One has to ask the question, if it was this planet, Rahu, that wiped out the dinosaurs. One also has to ask the question, were the occupants of this planet responsible for the flood also? Rahu represents the ascension of the moon in its precessional orbit around the Earth. It is paired with Ketu, K-E-T-U. The time of day considered to be under the influence of Rahu is called Rahu Kala and is considered inauspicious. Kala is a derivative of Kali, which means dark. As per Vedic astrology, Rahu and Ketu have an orbital cycle of 18 years and are always 180 degrees from each other orbitally, as well as in the birth charts. This is the original yin and yang. The sun light, the moon dark. 180 degrees each, with the moon completing the circle, or the moon binding the circle, and could be described as the dark version of the Holy Trinity. This coincides with the precessional orbit of Moon, or the 18-year rotational cycle of the lunar ascending and descending nodes on the Earth's ecliptic plane. And it also corresponds to what is known as a Saros, S-A-R-O-S, a period of approximately 223 synodic months, which is approximately 6,585 days, or 18 years, 11 days and 8 hours. And that can be used to predict eclipses of the Sun and the Moon. So what is a Saros? Saros is a period of time based on the lunar cycle, not the solar. It contains three periodicities relating to the lunar orbit: the synodic month, the draconic month, and an annalistic month. Excuse me. Anomalistic month coincides almost perfectly each Saros cycle. Now, synodic means council of the church. So it's the priest class again, so prevalent in Egypt. Priest also means Cohen, spelt with a C or with a K. Khan also means priest. Hence Genghis Khan, or Cohen, was from the priest class, who attacked the Rus and the Aryans. Anomalistic is suggestive of something being irregular, known as the year, which is 365 days, 6 hours, 13 minutes and 48 seconds, and the extra bits are why we have a leap year. As for the term draconic months, oh my, I don't think I need to say any more on that term. Rahu rules the zodiac sign of Aquarius, together with Shani, which is Saturn, which is Setan, aka Satan. And perhaps the dawning of the age of Aquarius is not as good as many thought. Another New Age program exposed and failed. Astronomically, Rahu and Ketu denote the points of intersection of the paths of the Sun and the Moon as they move on the celestial sphere. Therefore, Rahu and Ketu are respectively called the North and South lunar nodes of the East and the West. The fact that eclipses occur when the Sun and the Moon are at one of these points gives rise to the old understanding of swallowing of the Sun and the Moon by the snake. Oops. Rahu is responsible for causing the eclipse of the Sun. Hu in Sumerian is serpent. As it's stated, the swallowing of the Sun and Moon by the snake. This now makes more sense. Ra is the serpent, is what that object called Rahu is stating. Now, one of the issues I have about astrology in the modern day is that it can't be accurate because one constellation, which means palace, has been left out. We have 12, but one is missing. The same as 12 earth chakras, and one is hidden on the planet. 12 crystal skulls, but the 13th completes it. 12 plus 1. 12 disciples plus 1. and with the one hidden has been a major pondering of mine for the last decade. If you add back in the 13th zodiac sign, it all changes. Ophiuchus. Then most of the whole current mode of understanding of astrology needs to go in the shredder, in my opinion, as charts and alignments would go askew with the 13th zodiac put back in. So what is it about Ophiuchus and why has it been left out? Perhaps there's a possible connection to Rahu, Melchizedek, Noah, Shem, Ham, Indian gods, and many others of the more noted names of the past in the books and scriptures. All were said to have the mark of the Nephilim, born with a coat of armour, which is scaly skin. Rahu is the serpent. With that in mind, let's look at Ophiuchus, shall we? Ophiuchus, known as the serpent bearer. Oops. The constellation is said to consist of 2 planets, one covered in fiery molten lava and the other consisting of a large swamp. Fire and water, yin and yang. Ophiuchans have a natural affinity for snakes, and there was a special species of serpent called the Zarwinder, Z-A winder. House Ophiuchus had the greatest diversity in the zodiac. It is said people's skin, hair and eye colour all spanned the full range of the spectrum. Yet upon entering their teens, Ophiuchans developed scaly skin that is said would protect them from various creature bites and the natural elements. The Ophiuchus sign is represented by a fight between man and serpent. What if we've been in the age of Ophiuchus and not Capricorn? Given this world's current and recent past has been the battle for control of this planet between man and the serpent or the reptile species. The zodiacal sign after Ophiuchus is Sagittarius. What if we are going into Sagittarius next and not Aquarius? On one of my night travels around 4 years ago, I got into a discussion with an entity of where we were heading, and I disagreed with what I was being told. And I turned around and said, no, we're going to Sagittarius. Now back then it didn't make much sense why that came up, but with this piece, perhaps it does now. As a side issue to that, to get to Sagittarius, we have to go through the G cloud. Oh my, the GNA. For those of you who remembered Humanity Unplugged, that makes an awful lot more sense. Now, Rahu is mentioned explicitly in Buddhist mythology in a pair of scriptures from the Samyutta Nikaya and the Pali Canon. in the Kandimar Sutta and the Shurariya Sutta, Rahu attacks Surya, the sun deity, and Chandra, the moon deity. No surprise, the moon deity Chandra is the name of NASA's X-ray observatory. Now, in the Buddhist scriptures, before being compelled to release Chandra and Surya, they had to recite a brief stanza. A stanza means poem, conveying their reverence for the Buddha. And the Buddha responds by enjoining Rahu to release them, which Rahu does rather than have his head split into 7 pieces. Where have we heard that before? Now, the verses recited by the 2 celestial deities and the Buddha have since been incorporated into Buddhist liturgy as protective verses recited by monks as prayers of protection. But they're not protective. It's holding the dark. Rahu attacks Surya. Rahu the serpent attacks Surya was the original Vedic solar deity, the protector, and was replaced in Indian and Hindu his story with the fake solar deities Vishnu and Shiva. Both of them are dark forces and also fake lords. The whole of India's religious culture, and in particular Hinduism, is riddled with the references to snakes. The Nagas, in particular, as associated with Vishnu, Bhairav, and Ma Akala, and the worst of them all, Shiva. There is a reason Shiva is placed at the entrance of the collider known as CERN. It's an egregore guarding the gate to the underworld, along with a plethora of non-physical plane ninjas, who we'll cover later. So Rahu was in fear of being turned into the 7-headed serpent, and that entity is depicted throughout their temple, not ours, called Angkor Wat. Wonder of the world indeed. Nagas were cast into the underworld, and the entrance of which is marked by ant hills, it is said. How interesting. The ant people were guarding the entrance, I suspect, is what is being stated here. Ant people are different from the mantids. According to the Hindu scriptures, Naga live in the netherworld called Naga Loka or Patala Loka with unimaginable riches. Oh my. Unimaginable riches in the vaults, suggesting that they were guardians of the ancient treasures of what is now known as the Trust. So it went from the Naga serpents to the dragon serpents. Neither looked after it well, and this is why it's important that we do. When the Naga, it was said, were overpopulated on the earth, Brahma, the creator, it is said to have banished them to the underworld. Naga are the children of Kashyap Rishi, who married Brahma 13 daughters, 12 plus 1 again, and their mother's name is Kudra. Kashyap is also known as the father of gods, demons and animals, which is indicative to the spirit world. Snakes are Lord Shiva's garland, anklets and armlets. Hindu gods like Bhairav and Mahakala are protected and decorated by snakes. The 1,000-headed Naga called Ananta protects goddess Kali. The Kali Ma again. The Dark Mother, who is Lilith, represented as a moon goddess, half woman, half serpent. Like Lord Vishnu, many gods rest on Naga or are protected by Naga. The Naga guard the Hindu temples and also the shrines. The Naga are depicted on the doors, windows and the walls of the temples. And the Naga are also the seat of the deity. The piece I did recently ties in well with this on what is human. And we gave the 3 names of Hu. Sumeria, Hu means serpent. In Sanskrit it means dragon. Also pronounced Drakon, and so linked to Draco, but not the main Draco, but the Hydra Draco, who are a more dragon-like species, and in some cases worse than the Draco. If we have been in a Ophiuchus constellation, as speculated earlier, perhaps this next bit will lean further towards that theory. In Ophiuchus tradition, the name for a guardian is master. Yet master is a control-based term. In Sagittarius, the term for guardian is guardian. A guardian is the keeper, the protector. Big difference. This world, largely unknown, but to the very few on this planet, has been, for many thousands of years, been in a battle between human and the serpent or reptile species. The zodiacal sign depicts certain things, like Aries the ram, Cancer the crab. Libra has the justice scales, which is not justice scales actually, but is related more to Egyptian symbology of Mart and Thoth weighing people's hearts. Not for justice, but more in the line of trade and genetics, if you ask me. Speaking of Egypt, as the pyramids are another symbol of their buildings, not ours. Like I said earlier, Pharaoh means the great house. And what all the mythologies are stating via the zodiacal game playing is, the houses of the sky, known as the zodiacs, were conquered by the serpent bearer, and the houses of the sky then came down to earth. The 12 conquered houses, or zodiacs, were then brought down to earth, and the great house of the Pharaoh was born, which was then transferred as a takeover to Europe via the houses like Bavaria, Orange, Saxe, Gotha, Coburg, etc., It's all in the symbology and mythology once you start to connect the dots. The narrative of the so-called Israel tribes also speaks of the 12 plus 1, the hidden tribe of Israel. Matches the 12 zodiacs plus 1. Like I said, zodiacs are called houses. And it's also the original term for Israel, was not for the country, but it was known as the House of Israel. The Anunnaki, as those of royal blood, and also known by the term those who from heaven to the earth came, is an added clue, and in support of that analysis, the house of Ophiuchus came down to earth, known as the serpent bearers. The depiction of Ophiuchus is a man fighting a snake, and I think this is a depiction of what has been playing out in the current zodiacal time-space. It is the choice of hue. Hue, serpent man, or hue, man, which is us. The master reign ends, and the guardians return. And that is why back in 2016, humanity, not raw humanity, won the right to be the sole guardians of this planet via the peace treaty. We'll be back shortly. Hi all and welcome back. We're about 40% of the way through. It seems many are liking what's coming out. And this next section, we will strip away more myths of the New Age movement that we covered in an earlier From Russia with Love 4 show. And that show was important to grasp of what went on from around 1880 through 1925. Planned Parenthood, eugenics, Federal Reserve Life Force Energy Harvesting System, the destruction of Russia, the New Age program done by the likes of Blavatsky, Steiner et al., Albert Pike, plans of 3 world wars, and the likes of Crowley and co. bringing forth the dark magician path. Now, because of their access to the looking glass technology, they knew religion would start to fail, particularly in the West, and so provided a new program to fall into. Now remember, there was a hippie movement in the 1860s through 1970s. And think tanks take advantage of that to write new traps for the people. New Age is a deliberate sidetrack from one controlling system, religion, to another, fake spiritualism, all wrapped up in a nice package of Let's All Sing Kumbaya, which is about calling in the Lord. The Lord of the book is Anu, the draconic reptile king. The whole of New Age is riddled with falsehoods, goddess this and angel that, and so-called light magic, which is dark in essence. As like I said, you are calling in the jinns to do the magic, and those entities are far from light. All magic is dark. It is lazy technology being used again, when if you develop the self on a soul level, gain mastery over the self, you have a treasure of abilities not magic, awaiting you. Tantra and yoga, which are the esoteric practices in Hinduism that philosophize about the serpent power inside the human body. Oops. This serpent is called Kundalini, depicted as a coiled snake. It would be evoked by mysterious yogic practices or tantric rituals. When this serpent power is awakened, it is said, their quote, not mine, ignoramus humans are said to be liberated from worldly vices. The literal meaning of Kundalini is coiled naga. Naga is the snake. Oh dear. Tantra and yoga are calling on the snake. If you look at the mythological pictures, you will find Mahavira sitting with a 5-headed cobra behind him, or Lord Vishnu is sitting in meditation and there is a cobra behind him. Another Lord, from Anu to Vishnu, both had the scaly skin. But let's look at the description for Lord. Remember, the Ophiuchus term for guardian was master. Lord is an appellation for a person or deity who has authority, control, or power over others, acting like a ruler, a chief, or a master. Oh my. Lord is a master, chief, or ruler. Does those descriptions resemble anything like what the Creator Source would act like? Think different. The Lord in the books is not God. It's fake idolatory worship of entities who self-appointed themselves as better than anybody else, like the pharaohs. Even in the pictures of rishis, you will find a cobra with its hood open at the back. In this description of Hindu meditation practice, you'll now see the discrepancies in it. Their description of what happens when you are sitting in meditation. So what is happening? They state, your consciousness is getting alert, opened and awakened, as though you're in the background. There is a 1,000-headed cobra. Cobra signifies alertness. How many of you feel a lot of alertness in the back of your head during meditation, a sort of wakefulness? So they say the cobra is a symbol of the energy that raises and opens up, energy which is alert and at the same time restfulness. It is not that there is really a cobra at the back of their head, it is a symbol of wakefulness in the deep state of rest, and that is meditation, totally restful, wanting nothing, doing nothing, being nothing, and being open, like the hood of a cobra, alert without any effort. Their description. Now, I don't know what type of meditation that they're doing over there, but in my experience, when I was consciously doing meditation with the usual method of sit down in a quiet space, or with some meditation music, I now do it subconsciously whilst doing everyday things. Remember, it's a frequency zone that you are accessing. If memory stores that frequency, you can then drop into meditation mode whilst walking and also have your eyes open. The one thing you don't get in meditation is alertness. Unless you are in defense mode at the same time. You are drifting into the aether, all light and airy. But the one thing you are not is alert. That's the snake. It's all in the symbolism. When Indian people with the flute call on a cobra to perform, the cobra uses its body like two legs squatting and lifts up its torso, and the head is on alert. That position is what they have taught man to replicate during their meditation. Sit in the squat position with the head upright and slightly forward, replicating the cobra, stimulating and simulating the kundalini, which is the cord snake, the naga, the serpent, the ophiuchus. Are you getting the picture now? There are two types of descriptions for this. In one, they talk about a cobra. In another, they talk about a flower in ancient Hindu history. And the flower is like 1,000-petaled lotus, blossoming on the top of the head on the crown chakra. So back to Surya, the original solar deity. In Greece, he was known as Apollo, who regularly visited the area, also known as Hyperborea, who were replaced by the fake gods like Ra, Vishnu and Shiva. And what does Surya in the many statues depicted in India hold in both hands? The lotus flower, not the snake, like Vishnu and Shiva. So summing up this part, Hinduism, along with Buddhism and the Tibetan monk practices, are all symbolizing the snake serpent cult. Vishnu, Shiva and other deities within that culture of the embodiment of the snake Naga. Naga, the underworld group represented as hell in the scriptures. Well, at least that part is correct. False hidden hand worship with cloaked practices that are said to be to help man, but actually reinforces domain over man by giving your energy away to these serpent harvesters. Hidden devious elements wrapped in a nice package of what is described as enlightenment via a created New Age program, all carefully choreographed into a descent, not enlightenment, but a cloaked descent into the dark. New Age is not what people think they're signing up to. It is another one of their carefully disguised traps. Their version of enlightenment is about as illuminating as the Illuminati. And I hope the people of India take note of this piece. It's not to denigrate you or your country, but to make you realize that your culture, passed down generation to generation, is damaging you and us badly. There is a reason 7,000 of you die each day in India. It's called sacrifice. All going to the gods again, like the Kali Ma time. The Rus tried to teach you with the Vedic texts. Like I said, they're not Indian texts. They are Rus, as is the Mahabharata. And I'm asking the people of India to wake up and stop the harvesting of your people, all done in honour of your fake gods. Rahu is found in the Puranic genre of mythology. Puranic means ancient or old, which means it superseded Indian culture. There's the key. And perhaps this next part will confirm that and where it came from. Puranic includes diverse topics such as cosmogony, cosmology, genealogies of gods, goddesses, kings, heroes, sages and demigods. It involves folk tales, pilgrimages, temples, medicine, astronomy, grammar, humour and love stories, as well as theology and philosophy. Cosmogony is any model concerning the origin of either the cosmos or the universe. Now it's stated the Hindu, it's not Hindu, Puranas, P-U-R-A-N-A-S, are anonymous texts and likely the work of many authors over the centuries, or so they state. It's a bit like the word dog. It is stated to have no origin. But in a world run by cat and serpent cults, I guess the dog doesn't fit. The Puranas, it is said in India, do not enjoy the authority of a scripture in Hinduism, but are considered as Simriti. Simriti means that which is remembered, or that, or as we know, that which is pushed forward by the system, and let's ignore all the other stuff. And Simriti is a derivative secondary work and is considered less authoritative than Shruti in Hinduism. The Vedas, the Mahabharata, are considered under this term, which means it came from someone or somewhere else. Yes, we know. Isn't it funny how they can never remember the author or where words derived from in their history, isn't it? It's a common theme. There are 18 Maha Puranas, known as Great Puranas, and 18 Upa Puranas, known as Minor Puranas. Now, where have we heard those terms before? Great and minor has been referenced previously, has it not? The Great Bear and the Ursa Minor. The Urs. That is why they won't reveal the authors. The Urs represent man. Hindu culture wants to represent the snake serpent man, just like the Catholic Church. For those who are new and wondering why I say Catholic, check out From Russia with Love 3 for a full description of that, and it's all connected through each part of this series. Now, the tale of the Puranas begins in the remotest period of prehistoric time, when the gods and the Asuras churned the milk ocean to extract it from the Amrita, the elixir of immortality. Rahu was present at the time and overcome with pride, it was said. The Milk Ocean is described as the 5th of 7 oceans on this planet, and it surrounded the continent known as Krauncha. This continent and ocean is described as being around the Himalayas. Oops. The gods and the Asuras did the churning. Asura means demon. In real terms, jinns. And this was a common goal of these fake gods, all seeking immortality to continue their dominance over other species. It is covered rather well about the reptile species and their immortality and life essence in both Jupiter Ascending movie and also the Dark Crystal series. It's all there. Fiction is fact, remember. Now what I do know is there are bodies of water dotted around the world that still contain many beneficial healing properties, natural healing properties, that will prolong your lifespan and health, but I'm not sure on immortality. To be honest, I'm not sure immortality is a good goal to be striving for anyway. Death is your reconnection to source. It is not the end. It is a new beginning. To churn the ocean, they used the serpent, Vasuki. For their churning string and for a churning pole, they used Mount Mandara, placed on the back of what was said to be a great tortoise, called the Kurma avatar of Vishnu. Avatar of Vishnu? Oh my. You see, clones and or walk-ins, which means an entity taking over a vessel in here, have been around a very long time. It's not the future, it's always the past. And as the gods and demons churned the sea, a terrible poison, it was said, was issued out of its depths, which enveloped the universe. The Devas and the Asuras approached Shiva, who took the poison into his throat and swallowed it. Shocked by his act, goddess Parvati strangled his neck, hence then managed to stop it in his neck. But you can't do that on a human, you'll just choke him to death, which tells you these were not human, and prevent it from spreading to the rest of his body. However, the poison was so potent, it changed the colour of his neck to blue, thereby earning him the name of Nilakanta, the blue-throated one. Better than the blue chicken, I suppose. But all of the depictions of the Indian gods all have blue faces. This is the sign that all of them were poisoned and paid for their dark intentions. Maybe the key to that whole episode is you have to be of the right frequency to be able to consume that elixir. They clearly were not, and subsequently were poisoned. One man's pleasure is another man's pain. When the Amrita finally emerged, along with several other treasures, the Devas and the Asuras fought over it. However, Vishnu, now in the form of Mohini, the enchantress, manages, now man-to-woman avatar, to lure the Asuras, demons, into handing over the Amrita to her, which she then distributes to the Devas. A Deva is described not as a female, but a male deity in Hindu, which means heavenly or divine. The female version is Devi. And another example of the cross-gender meaning being played out by think tank social engineering groups, female personalities are known as Devas, which is actually the male version. And if you want evidence of these out of India deities spreading to Rome via Egypt, Vishnu, Brahma and Shiva, who are known as the Holy Trinity, there you have it. Siri, as in Sri Lanka, which is a breakaway country of India, follows the same deities. So what does Siri mean? It means to cook, boil, to burn, diffuse light. And in light of the sacrifices to the Kali Ma, that kind of fits. But in India and Sri Lanka, it's also used as a polite form of an address, as in Mr. or Mrs., Hi Mr. or Hi Miss. But what are they saying here? Hi, Miss Jones, I want to cook, boil or burn you. Somehow doesn't sound too polite to me. And it also means veneration of a deity known as Lakshmi, who was the consort of Vishnu, depicted as having 4 arms, which may be suggestive of an avatar or a walk-in. You will only see 2, but there's another person inside the vessel, so the arms become 4. Svabhanu, an Asura demon, disguises himself as a Deva, supposed to be divine god, and tries to drink some Amrita himself. Surya, the sun god, and Chandra, the moon god, alert Vishnu to this deception. Vishnu then decapitates Svabhanu just as he is about to swallow the nectar, leaving his head and beheaded body, which was immortal. Later, the head part is known as Rahu, and the tail or torso part is known as Ketu. Now, a bas-relief at the temple of Angkor Wat in Cambodia includes a depiction of Devas and Asuras working together to stir up the ocean of milk in an attempt to free the precious objects lost within. The ancient treasures. Angkor Wat, as nice as that building is, it does not represent us, but them, and their temples of sacrifice again. In essence, that building represents the Naga serpent's triumph over man. It's depicted right through the building if you look. Still think Indian culture is about enlightenment? Perhaps this next passage will make you rethink that notion. This describes the ceremony for this nectar, stated to be the elixir of immortality, but appears to all intents and purposes to not be. And according to the Tantras of Chakravarti and Tantras of Vajravāhi, a ceremony needs to be held for melting and blessing the inner offering nectar. You're not going to like this. The 5 nectar needs to be arranged in 4 directions. Yellow excrement in the east. Yes, you heard that correctly. Green bone marrow in the north. White semen in the west. And red blood in the south, with blue urine placed in the centre. Yellow vomit, green bone marrow, white semen, red blood, blue urine. For the ceremony of sacrifice. It gets worse. The 4 nectar, it is said, should come from wise monks, and the ova should be collected from the first menstruation of a blessed woman. The 5 meats are arranged similarly. The meat of the black bull in the southeast, the meat of the blue dog in the southwest, the meat of the white elephant in the northwest, and the meat of the green horse in the northeast. In the centre, the meat of a red human corpse. Told you wouldn't like it. After the ceremony, these ingredients will transform into an one taste ekarasa elixir, which it says to bestow bliss, vitality, immortality and wisdom. But it is also stated that the nectar does not actually offer true immortality. Instead, by partaking it, the devas were able to attain a higher level of knowledge and power, which they had lost due to the curse of sage Devasa. Devasa is Rishi, mentioned earlier. Following this event, Rahu, the head of the snake, and Ketu, tail of the snake, were given the responsibility to influence the lives of humans on earth. That's in their scriptures. The north and south nodes of earth, Rahu and Ketu, are the yin and yang symbol. And remember, I mentioned recently there were 3 parts to yin and yang, not 2. Most people miss the circle around the yin and the yang. What is the circle representing is the great question. The answer is, it is the earth being ruled by Rahu and Ketu, the serpent beings. Like I just said, they were given the responsibility to influence the lives of humans on earth. Yin and yang are not balanced either. It's another illusion played on the masses by the dark-dominated East. Both are dark. One of them needed to be light for balance. Rahu, the sun, light, was also dark. Ketu, moon, dark was also dark. This elixir, it is said, may well be seeded or encoded for only the higher initiates in soul development. That's a bit like how the treasure vaults were set up. Only 5 people on this planet can gain access to those vaults. Everyone else who attempts to do so dies. And could this elixir react in the same way? What it states is these people were not higher soul developed beings. They cheated by self-appointing themselves as important deities and gods. A real god would have been able to drink the elixir and may not even have needed it. Ketu in Sanskrit is the descending south lunar node in Vedic or Hindu astrology. According to some accounts in Hindu mythology, Ketu belongs to Gemini Gotra, whereas Rahu is from Patinasa Gotra, and hence both are totally different entities with distinctive characteristics, but are 2 parts of a common body, yin and yang. Now, Ketu is generally referred to as the shadow planet, and it is believed to have tremendous impact on human lives and also the whole of creation. In some special circumstances, it helps someone achieve the zenith of fame. Fame, like image and idol, all has the root word of mirror, the inversion. Ketu is often depicted with a gem or star on its head, signifying a mystery light. As per Vedic astrology, Rahu and Ketu, like we said, have an orbital cycle of 18 years and are always 180 degrees away from each other orbitally. And this coincides with the precessional orbit of the Moon, or the 18-year rotational cycle of the lunar ascending and descending nodes on the Earth's ecliptic plane. Ketu rules the Scorpio zodiac sign together with Mangala, which means moon. Scorpio is the house before the Firecus. Oops. Often it is stated that Ketu is misunderstood as Uranus during Sanskrit to English translation. However, Uranus is only barely visible to the naked eye, and its discovery is attributed to the use of telescopes, except that the symbol of Ketu is a U, which could explain why certain people linked it with Uranus. But in Hindu astrology, Ketu represents karmic collections, both good and bad, spirituality and supernatural influences, and it signifies, it is stated, the spiritual process of the refinement of materialization to spirit, and is considered both malefic and benefic, as it causes sorrow and loss, and yet at the same time turns the individual to God. Problem is, which God? Because it's certainly not Source. In other words, it causes material loss in order to force a more spiritual outlook in the person. Ketu is Karaka, or indicator of intelligence, wisdom, non-attachment, fantasy, penetrating insight, derangement, and psychic abilities. Ketu is believed to bring prosperity to the devotee's family. There's the seducement program again. Follow the dark and the riches will be bestowed on you. But those riches come at a great cost. It is also said that it removes the effects of snakebite and illness arising out of poisons. He grants good health, wealth and cattle to his devotees. Ketu is the lord of 3 nakshatras, or lunar mansions, lunar homes, house: Ashvini, Magha and Mula. Interesting term, Mula, which is a UK slang for money. But it has another meaning in South America, as it is a term for smuggling drugs via the stomach. The hidden dangers within is symbolic in my opinion. Ketu is considered responsible for moksha, sannyasa, self-realization, gnana, described as a wavering nature, restless, the endocrine system, and slender physique. The endocrine system and the symbolic links to that going on this planet currently via adrenochrome harvesting, the elixir of life. Connecting the dots now. As for Gnana yogis cannot afford to believe or identify themselves with anything. People who walk the path of Gnana are people whose intellect is such that they are not willing to believe anything, nor do they disbelieve anything. In other words, they're sleepers or bots then. The people who come under the influence of Ketu can achieve great heights, most of them spiritual, it is said. But if it's anything like the spiritual methods of Hindu, Buddha and Tibet, personally, I think I would give that a miss if I was you. Rahu, being a karmic planet, would show the necessity and urge to work on a specific area of life where there had been ignorance in the past life. To balance the apparent dissatisfaction, one has to go that extra mile to provide a satisfactory settlement in the present lifetime. Remember, all planets have different guidelines. Each one does different things. So if you're born into those particular zodiacs, these are where your astrology comes from. Except they've missed one out. Anyone born in the latter half of November up to the 10th of December is actually in the house of a Trikos. The ruler of Ketu, according to the most popular astrology text, Ketu is related to Matsya, exaltation and debilitation. And this has been a debatable point in astrology, as Ketu is exalted in the sign of Scorpio and debilitated in Taurus. However, many astrologers have disputed this, and most modern astrologers now seem to agree that Ketu is exalted in Sagittarius, which is the sign before a Trikos, and debilitated in Gemini, the twins, Rahu and Ketu. So both Rahu and Ketu are in the sign of Scorpio, as referenced earlier. This stands to logic, as Ketu is the torso and the prominent part of Sagittarius is a big horse, torso attached to a male upper body. Now the negative significations, while Ketu is considered malefic and has been mostly associated with negative things, most people consider it a difficult planet as it brings a lot of troubles on the material plane. It often brings a sense of detachment, losses, mindlessness, wandering and confusion in one's life. Welcome to Earth, Ketu. Its positive significations, there's a much deeper side to Ketu, as it's been called the most spiritual of all planets, considered to be the planet of enlightenment and liberation, as the one who has lost his head, worldly senses, being a personification of renunciation, torso without a head who needs nothing. Ketu, the ascetic that wants to go beyond the mundane life and achieve the final liberation. Well, you're not going to achieve that by dancing and cavorting with the dark. Dark is to be observed, not absorbed. By observing, you learn the lesson of how not to be or act. Dancing in and with the dark is not recommended on the path to spirituality. And perhaps the people who are doing Hindu and Buddhism, Jainism, never mind the more Western cults, need to take note. Now, in one of my earlier shows, I mentioned the torus pattern over Earth, and shaped like an egg timer. And at the centre in any system like that is called the void, the singularity. You are neither up or down the vortex. It's how black and white holes exist. Yes, there's a white hole below the black. Now, the void to many has many dark connotations, a place of total darkness. But dark energy is only energy that hasn't been manifested into a form or matter yet. It's the blank slate, a place of choice. It is a place of nothing for those with no imagination. But those with imagination can create from the blank slate. We spoke about the east and west gates, which has also been mentioned by Yellow Rose, Texas. Positioned in the centre of those two cones of the vortex, as the place where all the choices and actions are made. East for progression, west for stagnated beings and a chance to do it again with better results and outcomes for the next cycle. Having established with this show the north and south nodes are corrupted with the dark Rahu and Ketu, the east was the main battlefield of the past, with India, Japan and China playing key roles in blocking up or darkening the eastern gate. Don't blame the countries, blame the system. Having done so, they corrupted the west gate and its peoples with their dark occult practices, passed off as love, light and empowering, when in reality this series has shown it was clearly not. the dark magician tricksters pulled a massive stunt on the whole planet. But they've done it everywhere else. Thousands and thousands of planets they've done this. And one of the tricks I believe they used to trap us in the past is the sun rose in the west and set in the east. Another of their inversion programs. The double-coned vortex itself looks like an egg timer, which, funny enough, it says the sands of time pass through. It's also called the hourglass. Hour is a heads up to Horus. Like what's on the Jesus thing, IHS. Isis, Horus and Set. If you are descending down the vortex through the singularity and to the lower vortex, east would be on the left, the west on the right. But what if the cycle is completed and the egg timer is upside down on the next cycle? East would now be on the right and the west on the left. Maybe this describes the pole shift, or more accurately explains the loop. For those who are new, this planet has been in a Mobius loop trap of 78,000 years. 6 periods of 13,000 years, but this cycle, that loop trap ends. The Mobius loop symbol, another one of their inversions, dotted around as sigils in New Age as peace and various other beneficial aspects. Then in the 1970s they told you what it was, as it became the symbol of recycling. But what they don't tell you is what was being recycled was us. This next transition phase will be more definable as more people and beings have peeled back the layers of deceit and are ready to go forward. Those that have the light go east, the same as the sun now rises in the east and goes dark in the west. Choose your light and create, or have none and set with the sun. Essentially, those of you who go west as the sun goes dark and subsequently sets, set being the operative word, those are going with the entity known as Set, the left-hand path. The setting sun resets your timeline, or you define your own. I hope you all understand the meaning behind that. The setting sun resets your timeline, or you define your own. This is not a physical transition, as I understand it. It is a metaphysical transition, although it may become a physical if things get too dangerous here, as a protective measure for this species. Have you noticed right through this show and in previous episodes the amount of words that start off with the letter K? the dark occultists changed the words and spellings to represent the letter K. Magic, spelt with a C, is switched to a K. Mystic, the same. Witches connected to the moon goddess aspect are very prevalent in this practice. It is both indicative and a symbol of worshipping the Dark Mother and also the serpent race. So let's look at some of the names just in this show. Cohen became Khan. Kali Ma, the Dark Mother, another moon goddess. Julius Caesar, represented at a later time period by the term Kaiser. C becomes the K. The Lord of the Kaaba, the moon god. Kudra, Kashyap, is known as the father of gods, demons and animals. It's interesting he's the father of the animals, as this is related to the introduction to the tribal people of animal totems, which has not served them well to date. Kumbaya, Kundalini. Cobra, spelt with a C, but there's a version with a K that is also indicative. The Cobra with a K cult. The cult of Cobra, or sometimes just called Cobra with a K, is a secret criminal religious sect that began in India. Oops. It's the origins of which are shrouded in the mists of time, it is said. Not no more, it's not. Whether it's a coincidence or not, the alt media personality Cobra, it seems he is connected with an awful lot of moon goddesses, does he not? In modern day Jewish tradition, they speak of a sacrifice ceremony with letter K, no surprise. This sacrifice is made by Noah, was a Korban Olah, known as a sacrifice that goes up, a tribute to God that was entirely burnt on the altar. Remember, altar means sacrifice. The mystery Himalayan region, mentioned earlier, with an ocean, Krauncha, now known, of course, with another K word, Kashmir. We are both travellers of time and space, indeed. Kerma, the avatar of Vishnu. Ketu, known as the tail of the snake. What was once part of India, now a separate country, Kandy with a K, Ceylon, now known as Sri Lanka. The word communism and capitalism are now spelt with a C, so they reversed it. The original was with a K, and is still in use in Germanic countries with the letter K. Then we go to the rogue elements in China, who operate on behalf of the Black Dragons, called the Kuomintang. Dragon groups are all operated by the serpent reptiles at the top end. Another group who emerged out of communism, created by the Zionists, not Russian or Chinese, under the banner of Social Democrats, which is in Germany, and also Sri Lanka, found its way over to America in 1865, called the KKK, Ku Klux Klan. Antifa shares the same logo as the German Nazi political name, party name. The Zionists have a book and run dark agenda programs that is a mirror version of the real tree of life called the Kabbalah. You also have in Jewish and Amish cultures, they are one and the same group as Y, called kosher. Is it a coincidence when the sub-grey race were thrown out of the Garden of Eden to Egypt that two countries on that path now have K names, Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan? India alone has 31 towns or cities beginning with the letter K. Back to India again. The capital city of India is Calcutta, spelt with a C. Not no more, it's not. It's now known as Kolkata, with a K. Then we go back to From Russia with Love 1, and the Star Wars fight between the light and dark forces involving the Urs and others against the dark forces known as the Koshis. Koshi became kosher, in my opinion. I read this piece out recently. I'm going to read it again. Now you have a greater understanding of certain pieces on this show and some since. And the greater details you now have on Noah, perhaps you will now grasp more of this recent piece I did, which I'll repeat now with added pieces to it. And this was a speech by a Jewish rabbi made last month. On September the 25th, the 5,780th anniversary on the day in which Jewish tradition holds the world was created, the Sanhedrin is holding a conference for the emerging organization of 70 nations. The conference will culminate in an animal sacrifice made by representatives of the nations on the Mount of Olives, in which they will renew the covenant made by Noah upon leaving the ark. The ark was not a ship on the water, but a ship in the sky. He and his merry band of chimeras. The conference will begin on Wednesday evening, September the 25th, the 25th day of the Hebrew month of Elul, at the Jerusalem Gate Hotel, and continue until Friday, September the 27th. Lectures and discussions will focus on the Noahide obligations incumbent upon all of mankind. Also discussed will be the universal economic, cultural and educational topics that should be the focus of such an organisation. Rest assured, those people will not be involved in anything universal. A major focus will also be the establishment of an international court based on Bible principles. Based on whose Bible? It is said God established the borders of the world based on the 70 children of Israel. Really? So God drew lines on a map to divide people, did he? Is that what they're saying? Who went down to Egypt and the 70 nations that came out from Noah. The concept of 70 nations also appears in reference to the 70 oxen offered in the temple throughout Sukkot, the Feast of the Tabernacles, which the Talmud, Sukkah 55b, teaches are for the merit of the 70 nations. What are these 70 nations? I thought we were told in all the books God only chose one peoples. Is God planning globalist expansion programs? The first day of the conference will end with a joint prayer by all participants. Rabbi Hollander, the Sanhedrin's foreign minister, has been tasked with composing the unique prayer for the special occasion. He said, religion is a difficult word. An individual, quote, does not need a religion to relate to God. Good start, that. And take note of that statement, because I'm certain with the recent theme of contradictions will unfold shortly. He went on, Adam did not need religion to speak to God. Correct. Nobody does. Source, anyway. Because Adam was created by the gods is why. Adamu, which means slave, was a genetic creation of the serpent people. Religion, he said, is an activity that a community does together. Unless, of course, someone has a different religion, then it's let's fight over whose God is better. Fantastic community building, that. Not. Nations were established with Noah, he said. I thought they were established by God. Funny that, isn't it? Does that mean now Noah is God? And then there became a need for a religion, he said. There we go. We need to come together as distinct nations and religions. A nation that has the attributes that define, there's that word again, it, but also needs a religion. And there you have it. All in one paragraph. You don't need religion, and now you do. God created the world, and now he's saying Noah. Then Rabbi Hollander said, suggesting that the United Nations lacked this attribute. An organization of nations necessarily needs to be religious. 70 nations under God, but not any specific common religion. What is he suggesting here? A reduction of nations under the banner of the UN? Well, now the UN is being exposed and is collapsing. In comes an even darker replacement, of which all countries must be approved by Israel, or God, or Noah. And here's the kicker. The ceremony will renew the covenant made between mankind and God at the time. Which God are you referring to, though? We never made any covenant. Dark forces did that, and like Solomon, bound us into it. Covenant, like the word testament, means to bind. Why would God bind us? Bind us like the sacrificial offerings before being put in the fire. Is that what he's actually saying? Or is it covenant or ant-coven? He went on, I now establish my covenant with you and your offspring to come, with every living thing that is with you, birds, cattle, and every wild beast as well. Interesting term. is when you consider in the Talmud, non-Jewish people are declared beasts. In the Black Law Dictionary, humans means monster. The word education means training of animals. Oops. All that have come out of the ark, he said, every living thing on earth, I will maintain my covenant with you. Never again shall all the flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood. What religious person talks in those terms about cutting flesh off? I guess they just saved the cutting the flesh off for the sacrifices, as before it is burnt, all the flesh is cut off. That's what happened in Solomon and Herod and all the other temples. He went on, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. Well, given it was the so-called gods who delivered the flood, essentially what they're saying here is, as long as you stay bound to their undeterminable God and his covenant, we won't drown you again. That's what they're saying. Part of that statement was made from Genesis 9 through 11. You think the 9/11 part is a coincidence? It's not. It's one of their pagan ritual sacrifice dates. September the 11th. Always is. He went on. This sacrifice made by Noah was a korban with a K, olah, a sacrifice that goes up, a tribute to God that was entirely burnt on the altar. Just as Noah was not Jewish, but was a servant of God, this ceremony is a declaration that mankind is serving Hashem, which means God, literally the name. Hashem is the new name, along with Jehovah, Yahweh, Tetragrammaton, Noah, Adonai, all too common of name changes amongst the people who follow this cult. Malachowski becomes Netanyahu. Lenin was Ulanov. Bauer became Bayer, both of which are Rothschilds, which is not a title, which is a title, not a name, by the way. The same as Moses. Moses is a title, not a name. That's why you had so many different Tut Moses. Same thing. The Rabbi Weiss explained, the altar must be built and the sacrifice made by someone from the nations who keeps the 7 Noahide laws. Didn't say Israel would do it. There's a reason for that. It'll come up later. He said, it is still unclear, he said. This is a religious act, but not for any specific religion. But why do we need an altar? Which means sacrifice. Surely we have developed sufficiently to see through that illusion that we must kill animals or people as sacrifice to the gods. He then went on with this gem of contradictions. Feels like a cosmic voice show to me. He says, this is a meta-religion, not a global religion, which is inherent in every person and expressed in his own way. The world needs to return to religion. Rejecting religion rejecting God is a sickness that is afflicting the world. Oh dear. So having said we don't need a religion, now he says we do, using the term meta, which means about, after, beyond and amongst, like metadata. Now you're connecting the dots. Which means data about data. So meta-religion means religion about religion. Does that make any sense? He stated, but it's not a global religion. Well, it can't be. As previously said, it was only for 70 nations. When there are 209 nations currently, what happens to the other 139 nations? Are they deemed not adequate enough for this new meta-religion? I thought it was all-encompassing. These people don't think before they speak, all right? Flip-flops worse than Drake. These ceremonies are stated as sacrifices to atone their own sins, says Rabbi Weiss. These ceremonies are stated as sacrifice to atone their own sins. I hope that sinks in. But why is a poor animal or child, in some cases, as covered in the From Russia with Love series earlier, responsible for Hebrew Jewish cult crimes or sins? Does anyone sit down and think and ask, why are others made to end their lives because of the misdemeanors of somebody else? The same applies to the whole Jesus narrative. He died for our sins, they say. But why did Jesus get sacrificed when he didn't commit the crimes or sins? Does this make any sense whatsoever? You know, I wonder what would happen if THI created a religion and all members declared their sins and offered up the whole of the Rothschilds family as a sacrifice. Sounds fair to me. Whether people would think that was acceptable, probably most would say no. And yes, this whole religion is based on that very concept and is lost to most people, including the Jewish people. It's called scapegoating. You do realise where the term scapegoat came into existence. It is a Jewish sacrifice term. The ceremony is called Korban Olah. Korban means to draw close. Olah means Holocaust. Holocaust means religious sacrifice by fire. So Korban Olah means to draw close the Holocaust. It's stated the nascent Sanhedrin released a declaration to the 70 nations for Hanukkah to be read at a ceremony in Jerusalem on the last day of the holiday. The ceremony will include the consecration of a stone altar prepared for use in the third temple. The declaration is intended as an invitation to the nations to participate in the temple and to receive its blessings. Oh dear, blessings. Sacrificing animals and children is now declared a blessing for sore's sakes. Every temple around the world is a sacrifice centre for these dark magician psychopaths, whether these people are aware of it or not. And they need to learn, and learn fast. Hi all, and welcome back to the final part of 8A from Russia with Love. 8. And we have a lot more to come. This is what occurred when previous temples were built under the much revered King Solomon. Solomon sold humanity out for 3,000 years, I might add. During the building of the second temple, he decided to use what we now call as demons to build it. The real name are jinns. And he was given a ring that worked magic, but he didn't believe in it. And he used a child to cast the spell that summoned forth each demon spirit one by one. Nice chap he was, using a child as a guinea pig to test if it worked or not. Now, for further details of that event and the roles and the specific types of interference each demon exhibited and carried out, they have demons for marriage breaking, demons for creating affairs, demons for destroying this and demons for destroying that. Oh boy, they interfere with our lives far more than you realise. You can go and read in the aptly named the full text of the Testament of Solomon. There's that word again. Testament. It has the same meaning as covenant, which is to bind. Old or New Testament is new boss, same as the old boss. And we were all bound by demons due to Solomon and this cult. As each one was summoned forward, the ring was thrown at the chest of each demon, and that bound them to here, earth. And Solomon put them to work on building that temple, and this was a catastrophic, pardon the pun, mistake. And why I warn of the dangers of magic, light or dark, they both come with a price or consequences that are not conducive. A warning for those that use magic. A message. You are not performing the magic yourself. You are calling in the non-physical dark spirits to do the magic for you. And once they're here, they wreak havoc on you and everybody else. The covens and the witches holding hands in a circle creates the portal to bring in the jinns from the underworld. Jinns reside with the Nagas, the serpent people. So if you are involved in witchcraft, please quit it or any group associated with it, like Wiccan. Let's have a look at Wiccan and compare earlier mentions. Pagan-based, has goddesses, rituals on a full moon, worship the horned god, which is the Baphomet, another chimera, half man, half goat. Here is a list of gods and goddesses a Wiccan worships. The Germanic Eostra, which is Ostara, and the real reason for the celebration known as Easter. The Catholic Church changed the name in the 8th century and then wrapped the whole Jesus story into it. The next one, the Hindu goddess worshipped by the Wiccan, Kali, oh dear, the Dark Mother again, the Kali Ma. The Catholic Virgin Mary, which is another fake story. Immaculate Conceptions, dearly me. As each manifestations of one supreme goddess, and likewise the Celtic Cernunnos, another chimera, half man, half deer or elk. the ancient Greek Dionysus, the goddess of wine. Wine is a spirit, like vodka and gin. Gin being the operative word, it calls in the spirit demons. And the clincher and the dot connector of the Wiccan, the Judeo-Christian Yahweh, as aspects of a single archetypal God. And if it wasn't enough about Wiccans to show their path of darkness, they also partake in one of the 5 hooks, sex, tantric again, by performing sex rituals. Other traditions wear robes with cords tied around the waist, a bit like the red or black robed priests in the Vatican. Sometimes they'll wear normal clothes. And in certain traditions, ritualized sex magic is performed in the form of the Great Rite, R-I-T-E, whereby a high priest and high priestess, there's those Cohens again, invoke the god and goddesses to possess them. I told you, they're calling in the spirits, before performing sexual intercourse to raise magical energy for use in spell work, incantations. There's a group in the alt media known as Mystic with a K Mountain. Is not without similarities here, it seems. Dark-based witchcraft, as a patchwork quilt running through the echo chamber, is multifaceted and broad, yet simplistic once the main basic pattern is identified. Oops. Your words, not mine. In nearly all cases, it is instead performed this rite in token, where thereby merely symbolic. Yeah, right. We know different. The symbolized version, they state, is by using the athame, A-T-H-A-M-E, which is a knife to symbolize the penis, and the chalice, the poison chalice, symbolizes the womb. Just like Washington, D.C., with the monument symbolizing the Osiris penis next to the Oval Office, which is the womb. Rite, as in Scottish Rite, who were instrumental in the layout of Washington. You connecting the dots now? A rite has 3 main meanings. Rite of passage, generally changing an individual's social status. Communal rites, whether of worship, whereby a community comes together to worship, such as a Jewish synagogue or mass, both of which are indicative. And the final clincher, rites of personal devotion, whereby an individual worships, including prayer and pilgrimages, such as the Muslim Hajj, which is the Mecca ceremony. Oops. Now, many of you have heard of the Ring of Solomon that still exists and is worn by the Rothschilds at this time. No surprise there, is there? Quite frankly, I'm getting sick of speaking or hearing that name, and it's time it was banished, in my opinion. But whilst Rothschilds and their extended family network achieved wealth, assets and power, all courtesy of the Habsburg family, it all came at a very heavy price for them and their family members. A darkened soul incapable of love or compassion. Essentially, Rothschilds are Rumpelstiltskin. For those who have watched the series Once Upon a Time will understand that better. You'll also understand what magic is better as well. Look, We all need the dark, as they provide the lessons to those not following that path. But the heavy swing of darkness here and other places throughout this universe is tilted way beyond balance. It is rumoured that this universe was created by a source being who only wanted light. If that is correct, that experiment has failed badly. The dark came in with what is known as the fractal virus and began to corrupt everything. Other entities then took advantage, both humanoid and non-human looking, and the whole universe tilted badly to the dark in the region of 83%. This is why I speak of the 45-55 balance. A 5% correction either way can be easily fixed. 33% in this case has taken many thousands, if not millions of years to correct. This war has gone on a long time. Those of the light need the dark to provide an opposite to enable you to recognize which path you are on. It's the dance of life. As we contain both the ability to be an angel and a demon. It's about which path you choose. And it's only yours to make. But with this type of imbalance, it was more a case of the path open to you that looked all lovely and light, but was actually a seducement into the darkness. Now, for further details of the Solomon stuff, check out my show, Demons and Magic. It's on the must-listen-to list. In the next instalment of this series, we will reveal the hidden hand of all the names and organisations that has been brought up in this series. It will be even more packed than this show. It will connect more dots than previous shows and open the Pandora box once and for all. As this series has shown, it's all in the words when people take the time to look into it. Etymology study will bring many of you great benefits, connect more dots, and gain a deeper understanding. The written word has been abused badly over the last 600 years or so of our history, distorted into a subset of reality called illusion, perpetuated at the time by the Roman Church that marched through times destroying their history, oral teachings and written teachings, destroyed or looted ancient treasures and artifacts all over the world, declared science a pseudo-subject until they rewrote it into a program that fits their narrative. Mistranslations, vowels changed, names changed, religious denominations hidden, countries ransacked, cultures and ancient practices destroyed. America, a prime example. Columbus himself was funded by the Roman Church. They don't tell you that in school. Doesn't fit their narrative is why. They use meme sentences to push home their narrative, like Columbus founded America. Yet how many ask the question, are they stating America never existed prior to Columbus? Seriously. That is as bad as the world started 6,000 years ago out of the Hebrew biblical books. But the Bible can't be wrong, it is said. Fine. Try telling that to the talking snake. I'm sure it will be an interesting conversation. Look, I'm not here to trash all portions of religion, be it Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism or New Age. All of them have messages within them that are a part of what we're trying to achieve going forward. Messages of peace, harmony, love your fellow man, love nature and the planet, compassion, empathy, thou shalt not steal, murder or harm. All very valid exercises and lifestyles to live by. But here's the kicker. All those just mentioned are our own basic elements of what it means to be a human. It's inherent. And since when did we need books, churches, the priest class, pharaohs, fake gods or angels to tell us or guilt us into doing that with a program? We didn't. And that is the hook. The program that they've employed to harvest our energy and take us away from what is human. Take away our inherent right and connection to source. Take away from us as beings of light and used as batteries to enhance the dark forces. The religious program of all denominations, all of them stem from the one server. The rest are just terminals and reference points for divisive programs. Something that resembles good, just like the poison chalice, but has far darker intentions. Why are we still following ancient gods and not creating our own gods? People will say, you can't do that, they are divine beings. Wrong, that is the illusion. Every soul has the potential to be divine. In fact, a species cannot thrive without developing its own kind. We're not developing, we are in devolution due to these hierarchical freaks. The real definition of a god is any being who evolves onto a higher soul developmental level. That is open to all living beings. Not these select few fake sky gods who clearly never developed anywhere near higher soul level. Otherwise they wouldn't be asking you to sacrifice people or animals or worship them. A true God or higher soul developed being does not ask to be worshipped or honoured. They elevate those who haven't reached that status yet. Big difference. People ask why these dark or bad people don't appear to have karma in this lifetime at least. All those religions mentioned earlier have what is called a Day of Atonement. All of them. Remember what the rabbi said earlier? These ceremonies are stated as sacrifice to atone for their sins. So in other words, they're passing their karma onto the rest of the people who don't follow their gods. That's what they're telling you. Now do you understand the power of words, ceremonies, and the appeal of sacrifices these people do? It's word magic, spells, and incantations again, perpetuated by dark occults and witches, all of which dance with the demons, better known as the jinn. The jinn who are there to push the dark agenda. It's their role in creation. That's what they were assigned to do. It is the trap and also the balance in nature. But all of these religious programs have tipped the balance of nature on this planet and sent many spiralling into the left-hand path of the dark. And all have a responsibility to correct that. That is what these shows are about. Having knowledge is one thing, acting upon it is another. The question remains is, with over 2/3 of the planet wrapped into a religion or form of religion, a figure which was higher in the last 600 years, why has this planet, with all its good religious intentions, as they say, has this planet always been in a mess, turmoil, divisive, nasty and warlike? Question 2. Why is a high percentage of those deemed atheists have a lower violence or divisive streak? Question 3. Why are children brought up in a non-religious way more altruistic? What does the answers to those questions tell you? I'm not asking you to think logic. An example of logic, which is a science that deals with the formal principles of reason. An example of logic, if a visitor walks into a house with wet hair, it is logical for one to assume that it's raining outside. That is logic. That was an assumption. An assumption is not fact or truth. And like most of our knowledge, language, logic or reasoning, it's heavily flawed. Because their system of lies relies on us believing the assumption, not the fact or the truth. So I'm asking you to think realistic. What is real and what is the illusion? Like the mirror, which is a likeness of an image, not the image, a likeness of the image. The real image is viewed in the third person, which is you. The lies and illusions will be no more. The curtain of darkness and deception will be pulled back, and the light will shine through on an unprecedented level. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide after this episode. I'll see you all again on Tuesday. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show from Russia with Love, Part 8A. Bye for now.